¿Cómo estás, my amigas? I'm Justin, and today I'm going to be analyzing the Scream tutorial that I released in 2016. I believe it's titled How to Scream, 10 Different Techniques, and it's got my face in the thumbnail, and I look kind of like this. So the reason I'd like to talk about that video and analyze it is because it's 5 years old. At the time, I had been doing vocals for 9 years. So I started doing both harsh and clean vocals in 2007. I was about 16 or 17 years old. So in 2016, when I made the tutorial, I was like 25 or 26. And like I said in the video, I did not consider myself a professional vocalist or a professional coach. I was just some guy on YouTube that had a bunch of studio albums. Fast forward to what's like basically 2022. I've been doing vocals for about 15 years. I have talked with other coaches, both harsh vocals and clean vocals. I've taken lessons from a classical singer who has her master's degree in voiceology. I'm in a band, Tala, so I've been touring and been on the road for months at a time. I'd like to consider myself a professional now. Like I do this for a living, so it's my profession. So I don't think it gets any more professional than that. But yeah, I want to analyze that Scream tutorial because it's got over 3 million views. For a while, it was, and I think it still is, the #1 Scream tutorial on YouTube as of like right now. So many people have approached me, both online and offline, telling me that they learned how to scream because of my video. And that's so flattering, and I think that's so cool. But at the same time, I'm like, I've had other bands that Tala has played with, these vocalists like come up to me and they tell me like, hey man, I would not be on this stage right now if it weren't for you. I learned how to scream from your tutorial. And as cool as that is, there's a lot of stuff in that tutorial that is not safe. So I just want to go over some of those techniques because there's a safe technique and then there's studio safe. A studio safe technique is a technique that you can do in the studio and not hurt yourself, because once you're done recording your vocals, you're done doing vocals. You can rest. You can let your voice heal. You can let the inflammation go down. You might not even know your voice is inflamed. Whereas if you're doing those same techniques on a tour where you're expected to do that every single night for 30 to 90 minutes sometimes for like 2 to 3 months straight, some of those techniques are going to absolutely destroy your voice. So we're gonna clean that up today because I really don't want your blood on my hands. If you did learn how to scream from that tutorial, please keep watching because yeah, there's some stuff we need to talk about. So without further ado, you guys ready to start some school? Let's do this. It's a great intro. So creative. And in my mind, no, I could never, ever fall. So, I still stand by this statement. I think this is completely true. Everybody's voice is different. You're not going to sound exactly like me. I'm a male tenor. So, if you're a baritone or a bass or a girl, you're not going to sound like me. And even if you are a fellow tenor, I'm 5'11". We don't have the same like resonance chambers in our bodies because you're not me and I'm not you. We have different sized vocal folds. We have different sized thyroid cartilage. We're different. So this is true. This is a totally true statement. But you can get pretty close. Also, in case anyone was wondering, because I never said it in the original video, that song that's playing is called In the Eyes of a Sword. It's by Hungry Lights. That's me. It's off the album The Uriah Sent. Go check it out after the video's over. Hey there, you YouTube metal cats. I'm Justin, and today I am going to show you 10 different screaming... So I'm going to stop you right there, 2016 Justin. It's not 10 different techniques. So the title is extremely misleading. However, it got me 3 million views, so I'm not going to change it. Anyway.
Hopefully you can at least get one of these techniques to work for you.
If you've watched that video and you haven't managed to get even one of those techniques or variations to work for you, you should consider taking lessons with me. I've taught hundreds of people how to scream now. They can scream safely and they sound great. I've put my email in the description below. I'll help you out. And it doesn't take long. I've taught some people how to scream in like 2 lessons. It really just depends on like how good you are at learning things.
I am not a professional. I've never taken vocal lessons. I have no idea if these are fry vocals or false chord or any of that.
That's all completely false now. I know everything.
I just make noises, and if it sounds cool and it doesn't hurt me, awesome.
That is a horrible mindset to have as a vocalist, and I'll tell you why. There are techniques out there that are good techniques, but if done incorrectly, they will mess you up and they don't hurt. Great example is when you're doing like a normal false chord scream and you try to do a high out of it and get that underneath the scream, that will wreck your voice. That is your true folds, but they're like semi-open, so you're getting a falsetto tone. You've got that kind of starting to slip through the false chord distortion. That does not hurt. That will trash your voice. That is what Ollie Sykes used to do. Pretty sure that's what Ollie Sykes still does. That's what Danny Warsnop used to do. That's what Corey Taylor used to do. Again, it doesn't hurt. So it's very deceptive because tons of people who are false chord screamers will try to make that sound to get their high screams, and they have no idea that they are putting their vocal folds under immense pressure. And if they were to go on tour and do that, they would not have a good time. So it's just not a good mindset to have. If you're going to be a vocalist, you should do the research. You should find out what's safe and what's not, especially if you plan on being the front man and not just being like a studio musician. Because again, even that technique, that type of screaming, you can get away with that in the studio because you don't have to do vocals tomorrow. But try doing it every day for 90 minutes on stage when you're tired and you can't hear yourself and you're pushing a little too hard because you want to impress people and you want to sound great. You're probably dehydrated. It's not a good time. You will absolutely get vocal strain, and if you don't like stop doing vocals like that while you're on the tour, you probably will lose your voice. It does not take long. It takes one bad show and then maybe like a week's worth of shows while you have that vocal strain and vocal damage to completely destroy your voice, get vocal nodes, need surgery, and you will never be the same. So trust me when I say this, that is not a good mindset to have. Do your research. Let's keep going though.
So we'll start as simple as possible. Easiest scream in my opinion to start with would be just basic.
So I know where this is going, and I just think it's really ironic that I said, let's start as simple as possible, easiest scream in my opinion, and then I proceed to attempt to teach you a very complicated hybrid screaming technique. Hybrid screaming is something that's not talked about often because I think a lot of people just don't do it. Here's why it's called a hybrid scream. You're basically doing a false chord scream in a fry position, which gives it fry overtones, and it kind of makes it sound like a fry scream. So when I go, yeah, or yeah, or yeah, a lot of people will think that that is a fry scream. However, if I remove the fry from the scream, yeah, you can hear it's false chord. However, if I remove the false chord from the scream, yeah, you can hear that it's fry because it is both. It's both techniques at the same time. But it's really complicated. You shouldn't start here, which is why I stopped the video, because I think it's funny that I said, let's start simple, and then I teach you how to do a scream that you can't do unless you can already fry scream or already false chord scream. So, let's just keep going.
Your middle range is probably your, most widest range in your vocal.
So I agree with what I said there. Your mids should be your widest range, but they should also be like the center of your technique. It doesn't matter if you're doing false chord or fry, your mids should be solid, and your highs should just be manipulated mids, and your lows should just be manipulated mids. If you're one of those vocalists that has like insanely high, like screeching dolphin high screams, and you have like these like demon level diarrhea going through a pipe gutturals, but you don't have mids whatsoever, you're probably doing something wrong, and you should either consider reassessing your technique or getting vocal lessons. So for example, let's just take my hybrid screams. If I go to a high and then remove all the stuff that makes that high a high, it should turn into a mid. Yeah! It's a mid. Yeah! Same with lows. Yeah! It's a mid. And it works for other techniques as well. Let's take false chord, for example. Yeah! Yeah! It's a mid. Yeah! It's a mid. Fries. Yeah! It's a mid. It's a mid. I'm creating highs and lows by manipulating my mouth shape, my tongue placement, and playing around with the placement and resonance chambers. But ultimately, if you want to be safe about your vocals, everything should just be a mid scream. Moving on.
You're going to do is you're just going to pick a note in this mid range, just like an ah, and then you're going to kind of compress your diaphragm, like tighten your abdominal muscles, almost like you're trying to do like a sit up, but with that note. So it's going to be kind of like a ah.
Let's stop there. So a couple things about this explanation. One, you shouldn't start screaming by picking a note. That's a terrible place to start from. If you're doing false chord, you should start with a breath. Yeah. And if you're doing fry, you should start with your vocal break. That's where you start from. You don't start with That's bad for you. That is so bad for you. So if you learn how to scream doing that, I'm sorry. Lord, you need to learn how to scream again. Now, what I'm showing you here, it's not all bad. This is a great way to work on controlling your abdominal muscles and your breath support. It's just not a great way to learn how to scream. And let me explain why. When you pick that note, and you tighten up your abdominal muscles, it is going to push air out. But because your vocal folds are closed, because that's a closed chest voice note, all that extra air doesn't have anywhere else to go, so it's going to stimulate your false folds. So that is technically a form of false chord screaming. It's just the note is on top of the scream. Not to be confused with what I was saying earlier, which is, yeah! That's completely different. When you do that, yeah! If you remove the distortion, yeah! You're just blowing air past open vocal folds. You're asking for vocal strain. But when you go, yeah, and remove the distortion, yeah, it's just closed vocal folds. It's just you singing in your chest voice. That's totally safe. So if you think of your vocal folds as a rubber band, when you're doing your false chord screaming, yeah, they're more open. So as soon as I add that chord closure, yeah, it's false chord distortion. It's perfectly safe. So the point I'm trying to make is that that type of distortion, that like tonal chest voice false chord, you might have also heard it referred to as glottal compression. That's safe. Don't confuse glottal compression with glottal attacks. A glottal attack is when you say a vowel like apple and you get that apple, airplane, orange, that sound. That's horrible for your voice. That's literally your vocal folds slapping together like this and going which is why it's really important when you practice screams, you don't want to practice going That's times 10 smacking. That's your vocal folds punching each other in the face. Always pick a liquidy consonant like a y or a r or a w to build into it. You don't want you want ya, ra, wa, something like that so that you don't have that glottal attack happen. You just kind of ease into it. So that's something to think about. The point that I'm trying to make is that sound, that is completely safe if you do it within reason. Now, if you do what I'm doing in this video and you over project it and push it to the point of making it sound almost like a scream, That is dangerous. The technique itself is not dangerous. The overprojection is dangerous. And I've got a whole video about overprojection. If you'd like to watch that, it's linked in the description below. If you take any technique, whether it's hybrid screaming, false chord screaming, fry screaming, and you overproject it, it's dangerous. The safest technique in the world becomes dangerous the second you overproject it. So you really need to watch your breath support. So now we're going to talk about... We're going to talk about using your diaphragm. So I'm sure you've heard hundreds of vocal coaches and wannabe vocal coaches on YouTube talk to you about using your diaphragm. When a coach tells you to sing or scream from your diaphragm, they're kind of setting you up for failure because you can't like physically do that. You can sing and scream from your throat, because that's where your vocal folds are. However, the diaphragm engagement, what they're really trying to talk about is breath support. Your diaphragm is an involuntary muscle. It just kind of like does its thing on its own without your say-so. However, there are things you can do to sort of like stimulate that diaphragm activation. And that's what we're going to talk about right now using this balloon. Here's what I want you to think of this as. That's your mouth. This is your throat. Where my fingers are stopping the air from coming out, those are your vocal folds. This is a lung full of air. The bottom of the balloon is your diaphragm, okay? If I hold my breath and I release my vocal folds and then retighten them, I'm essentially doing this. If you want to make it more screamy, it's like I'm going like this. If you're a fry vocalist, think this. It's like I'm going mouth, throat, vocal folds, lung full of air. Bottom of the balloon is the diaphragm. And notice when I release the air, I'm not doing anything. It happens on its own. I'm in control up here. And the air just comes out, right? Now, if we introduce another element, this hand equals your abdominal muscles. If your abdominal muscles push up on your diaphragm, it's going to make the air come out faster. But if I continue to hold my vocal folds closed, you get compression. You can physically see it in the balloon. We've created compression. Now, when you let go of this, you're pushing with your abdominal muscles, and that air comes out so much faster. So using my stomach, I can kind of explain it a little bit better. Okay. Well, this lighting makes me look fat. I swear I'm not fat. Like, look at this. Like, come on. I got abs. I go to the gym all the time. But for some reason, this lighting just is like super washed out and just makes me look like I have a tummy. This here, I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to see, but this here, like where your ribs are, this is where your diaphragm is. It's kind of in this area, solar plexus area. It's up here. We're going to talk about down here. We're talking about your stomach, okay? If you let all your air out and then you breathe in, your stomach should inflate like that. Obviously, your lungs are up here. You're not actually filling your stomach with air. Don't be retarded. But think, let all your air out, breathe in. Your stomach should inflate first. Now, if you get this and you inhale like this, that's not going to help you be a vocalist. So get rid of that whole chest idea and just involve your stomach, okay? This is what people are talking about when they're talking about using your diaphragm. So if I were to just hold my breath and just start letting out increments of air. See what's happening? It's being controlled from here. That's what you want. La! See how this area tightens up. Even when I talk, I could be relaxed, and as soon as I start talking, I tighten here. If you're screaming, false chord, yeah! Fry, yeah! Hybrid, yeah! Even if you're like doing like whispering, the idea is that this muscle is basically like the gas pedal of your vocals, okay? This is literally just forcing air out of your lungs, but your vocal folds are deciding how much air is going to come out. Now, an important thing to keep in mind is that I'm not purposely tightening up. I'm not going like, like it's happening by itself. So you need to get to that point. Something that'll help you get to that point is saying the word hut. When you say the word hut, you've got projection, compression, and vocalization all built into the same word. Even better, if you drop the T and you say hut, you get closed vocals involved. Just watch. Hut, hut, hut. You're seeing the H sound has all the air coming out, but then as I vocalize, I get a little bit of compression involved. Ha, ha. Not as much air comes out because I'm not letting as much air out. And when you fully commit to it and you cut the U off, ha, 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 you can even hear when I release it, you can hear the sound of my vocal folds opening again. Ha, ha, and then I relax. Being able to do that is what everyone is talking about when they say to use your diaphragm. It's natural. Like I said, I'm relaxed, and then as the second I start talking, I'm now giving it gas, and I'm controlling how much gas is coming out with my vocal folds. Does that make sense to everybody? That was a long tangent, I know, but trust me, this is really important stuff. Let's continue.
So when you're doing your mid screams, you'll feel it in your throat a little bit.
So this is still completely true. You should feel something in your throat. Doesn't matter if you're doing false chord, fry, hybrid, your vocal folds are in your throat and you're creating the sound with either your false folds or your true folds. So if you're doing false chord, you should feel something here. If you're doing fry, you should feel something here. If you're doing tonal false chord and going, you should feel something here. And if you're doing hybrid, you should feel something here. There's no exception. The sound is being created here. If you're claiming that you don't feel it in your throat, even a tiny little bit, you just have really, really poor proprioception. It is happening. I promise you it's happening. There's no way you're creating distortion from your vocal folds and not feeling it. It's impossible. We'll talk about that more in a second.
Obviously, because the noise is coming out of your throat, but you should mostly feel it, in your chest. Say with your chest, little ass nigga.
So, two things. First off, I got so much hate for saying that word. I probably should have put something on the screen, but I'm half black, okay? My father is black. My biological father is black. I am biracial. I know I look very, very white. I am white presenting, but I'm not racist for saying that word. Another thing is, I made this video back in 2016. It was a different time. We didn't have this fucking PC culture SJW bullshit back then where people were canceling each other for things that they've said online. But it shouldn't matter because at the end of the day, it was a Kevin Hart reference. He's a comedian, and I literally stole a line right out of one of his stand-up specials. But anyway, I don't want to talk about this anymore. I've said my piece. I don't want to see people debating and arguing about this in the comments. It's done. I've already explained myself. Let's get back to vocals now. So when I say that you should feel it in your chest, this is not incorrect. What I'm talking about is a resonance chamber. You have different resonance chambers in your body. One happens to be in this chest area. What you're feeling is the resonance. It's the sympathetic vibration. A sympathetic vibration is basically your body responding to the sound that you're making here. So when I go and do like a standard false chord and go, yeah, I can feel it in my chest. Now, I've heard professional vocalists claim that they're creating that grit or creating that distortion in their chest. That is physically impossible. You're not. Anyone who says that just doesn't understand resonance and proprioception. Proprioception is the ability to feel these like vibrations and whatnot in your body. So if somebody claims, I don't feel anything when I scream or when I sing, I don't feel anything at all, they just have really bad proprioception. Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but they have no self-awareness of the inside of their body. You're going to feel it somewhere. Even if you place everything perfectly, you're going to feel it somewhere. Trust me. It's impossible not to. You are going to feel it somewhere. So when I do a standard false chord scream and just go, yeah, I'm feeling it here. If I were to do like a guttural and go, I might feel it way down here. Even though I'm creating the sound here, I might get vibrations way down in my gut because that's kind of where I'm aiming the resonance when I make that sound. When I do a fry and go, ha! A lot of people say they can feel fry kind of like here or like at the back of their tongue. Some people even feel it as high as their soft palate. The distortion isn't being created there. That's just where you're feeling the resonance. That's where you're feeling the vibration, but you're not creating the grit there. And that's very important to understand. So when I say you should feel it in your chest, I'm talking about this specific hybrid mid. When I go, yeah, that's where the vibration is. But if I were to do a high and go, yeah, now I'm feeling it up here in my nasal cavities because in order to even create that sound, I'm taking that mid and I'm shooting it up here. The resonance is going into a different resonance chamber. It's going up into this nasopharynx area now. Let's keep going. So what I feel, live with me more shame. So I just want to talk about that real quick. A lot of people in the comments used to make fun of me because I say shame, and you hear that shame, you hear that expulsion of air. That's just something I do. It's not good or bad for you. It's just like a habit I have. When I'm done delivering a line, I just get rid of all my air. I dump it out because I know I'm about to breathe and get more air in a second. Like I could just go, it would be more shame, and it would be fine. But I would rather shame and then get ready to take another breath. I just want to get the air out. That's all it really is.
So if you could do that scream that I just showed you, chances are you can do scream number 2, which is another mid scream, but it's more of a yell scream. And I included yell.
So this is true. It's not a yell scream, but it is true. If you can do that hybrid scream, all you have to do is close your vocal folds a little bit more to get rid of that fry overtone, and then you just kind of have the false chord part. Yeah! It's right there for you. You don't have to tone it down. I'm just closing my vocal folds more.
The best way to do it is basically either to jump right into that scream I showed you and tone it down, or start from a clean note and build.
What I meant was close your vocal folds, but I didn't know the terminology at the time.
It up. So, if the clean note...
And that is true. What I'm about to say, the whole taking the clean note and going, ah,
is like 1 and the scream is 10, you want to be between like 3 and 7.
Yeah, I'd say maybe even less. I wouldn't even go to 7. I'd say somewhere between like 2 and 5, honestly. You really don't need to put too much more into that sound.
You can either take a clean note and or you can take a full-blown scream and just
The problem with that second method is if you can't do the scream, it's not going to help you. You have to be able to do a hybrid scream. Now, if you can just do a false chord, yeah, then just close your vocal folds. Yeah, and then you're going to get there. But that does take some practice because in order to close your vocal folds, you have to pass through that fry territory. And if you don't know how to even open and close your vocal folds, like if you can't go, there's no way you're going to be able to do it with distortion and go, So maybe take lessons. I tested the weight of my egg. This is safe though. This is one of the techniques that I did teach in this tutorial that is safe. I've been doing this for 14 years. It's how I do my clean rasp. Like when I'm singing like something like Overconfidence and I say like, I wasn't it only to help you out. It's the same thing. It's not fry. It's just up higher. And you can hear when it starts to take on that nasally quality as I place it even higher. Lots of vocalists have done this. Sully Erna from Godsmack. I stand alone. James Hetfield from Metallica. Say your prayers, it's the one. Don't forget my son. Chester Bennington. When he does his clean singing, I'm hearing that false chord. I can't feel the way I did before. It's that It's that same sound. It's just placed higher like I was talking about before. Even when he does like the crazier stuff like, no, hear me out now. You're gonna listen to me like it or not right now. I haven't entered Fry. Another famous one would be Jonathan Davis, when he kind of does that whole like, why are you trying to make fun of me? It's that same, ah! Even Corey Taylor, he kind of like pushed it a little bit more, but to get that whole like psychosocial kind of thing. I did my time and I want out! It's that same, ah! Now, Corey Taylor did like hurt himself, but it wasn't doing that technique. The point I'm trying to make is that this is completely safe, because underneath the distortion, I'm just going I'm just singing, but I'm compressing enough that the air stimulates my false folds and you get that distortion at the same time. So I'm not going to say it again. It's a safe technique.
So play around with those, have fun, be safe.
Lisa told you to be safe.
But we're going to move on to number 3, which is low screams.
So again, this isn't a technique. This is literally the same technique as number 1. It's just a variation. It's taking that mid scream and manipulating it so that you get a low. And again, this is the hybrid one. This isn't your standard false chord low, which is why my false chord lows don't really sound like most people's false chord lows. I started as a fry screamer. When I was like 16, 17 years old, I learned how to scream by doing this like, yeah! type of like fry high. And as I brought that lower and lower and lower, eventually my false chords just kicked in, and you can hear it. If you just go, right there, it just happened on its own. And then as I brought that back up, that's how I learned how to do this hybrid technique, because it is both at the same time. It's false chord and fry. It's false chord in a fry position. Your standard false chord low is going to be more like yo, or if you were to like make it lower and do some more tricks to get it lower, you're going to get more of like a which sounds completely different than ooh. My technique has a lot more compression to it, and that compression allows me to almost get more of this like hollow sound. If you want to learn how to do it, take lessons with me. The point I'm trying to make is that it's not a different technique. It's the exact same technique as number 1. It's just a different variation of it. I've changed my mouth shape. I've changed the resonance placement, and I've even like done things with my larynx and like my tongue placement to get the pitch lower and lower and lower. But again, if you go into your low and just get rid of all the fancy stuff, it's just a mid. It's this same technique. It's just a lower pitched mid.
Low screams, at least for me, were a little bit more tricky to figure out than the mid scream.
Yeah, like they were tricky for me to figure out because I started as a fry screamer. A lot of fry people can't go low with fry. You can go low with fry. Don't get me wrong. But from what I've seen, most people choose to do fry highs and false chord lows. So fry just sounds better high. It's a thinner sound. False chord just sounds better low because it's a thicker sound. You shouldn't be one of those people that says like, oh, fry is better, or oh, false chord is better. Do them both and then pick whatever technique you want to do. As long as you're not over projecting them and you're being safe, like you're gonna sound great.
The best way that I can describe to get your low scream sound would be to imagine that you're just like a big ass dog and you just, you know?
That is true. Like there's nothing incorrect about that. To get that sound, it is a dog bark kind of sound. I'm pretty sure I could go lower than that now. Hold on, let's do like a compare. Yeah, I got way lower with them. Like 5 years of practicing my lows, I managed to get even lower. This was what, 2016? 3 years before this, my lows then were more like, it was even higher. Like I just keep getting lower and lower and lower because I just keep practicing and you just keep finding little things you can do to get lower and lower and lower.
But people with deeper voice, obviously, your low screams are going to sound way better than mine. But
it's true. It's absolutely true. If your voice is deeper, it's because your vocal folds are bigger, so you are going to sound lower. If you're doing the right techniques. If you're doing everything I'm doing in this video, but your voice is deeper than mine, you're gonna sound lower than I am. Whereas like someone with a deeper voice, they're not gonna get as high as I can because my vocal folds are thinner, so I'm gonna get higher pitches. That's just how it works. That's your anatomy.
I find it helpful to kind of dip my head when I'm doing the low screams.
So don't do that. At the time, yeah, I found it helpful to do that because it's just like, it's more of like a head thing. It's a mental thing. It's not actually doing anything. When I go, ooh, it's really not going to sound that different than if I went, ooh, or even if I went, ooh. It's all the same. You should be able to do the scream without turning your head or doing anything weird like that. If you have to do something like that, you're probably doing something wrong. You should be able to just completely neutral, just ooh, and it should be fine.
If the exhale lows are not really doing it for you, you could always try inhale low.
Don't do inhales. Inhales are so bad for your voice because in their nature, you're sucking air into your vocal folds and stimulating them in reverse. They're not made to be vibrated that way. Don't do inhales. I even knew back then not to do inhale screams, but I included them in the video because I wanted the clickbait. I wanted to be able to say, here's 10 different techniques. Don't do inhale screams. If you're an inhale screamer, stop doing it and just learn how to exhale scream. Literally anything you can do with an inhale, you can do with an exhale. Save your voice. Don't do inhales.
I really do not recommend them at all, but I do know a few bands that...
If you want to do them in the studio, go for it, but don't do it on tour. You will kill your voice. I'm just going to skip the inhale section because don't do inhales, because at the end of the day, they are going to sound like shit.
High screams are... They require like a little something extra. Like I said, my voice...
So it's true, high screams do require something extra. So do low screams. Again, it's just a manipulated mid.
What you basically want to do is kind of do what you did for a mid scream, like find that note and add the rasp. But if you do that by itself, it's just going to be like a sort of high scream in order to achieve the sound.
That is true. So let's say you have your mid and it's like, yeah! You can bring that note higher and go, yeah! 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 You're still stuck there until you do the other stuff, which I'll talk about in a second.
You know that dangly thing in the back of your throat?
That's called a uvula. I learned that the hard way, ladies.
You're basically gonna like compress your tonsils so that they kind of push.
You're not going to compress your tonsils. So I got a lot of comments that were like, what if I don't have tonsils? Am I not going to be able to high scream? This was just me being stupid. You're not going to compress your tonsils. What you're actually going to do is change your mouth shape. So instead of saying ah, you're going to say ah. And when you say ah, your tongue goes to the roof of your mouth and it cuts off this space. Ah, 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 ah. As you say ah, your larynx is also going to go up. Ah, 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 ah. As you go you're going to start to utilize this nasally area. Hear how it gets cut off? So when you're doing the scream, yeah, yeah, just by changing to yeah, I've suddenly turned a mid into a high scream. You can even push it even more into that nasopharynx area. Like I could just go, yeah, yeah, but if I want to go even higher, yeah, I can push it more forward. But eventually I am going to tap out with these highs. So if I want to get higher, then I would just switch to fry and get yeah, and then do the same thing. Yeah, and you're going to get higher and higher and higher. But eventually you're going to cap out. Find your hard limit and then find your soft limit and stay at your soft limit and then you'll be safe. Yeah. Look at how much of an asshole. I just want to point this out. You see when I look, like I know I sound good. Like I was just like, Yonkers! Like, yeah, I did that. I know I'm very good at high screaming. I also like how my facial hair still hasn't grown in right here. It's been 5 years and it still hasn't grown in here and it still doesn't connect right here. Think of your voice like a rubber band. To get higher, you have to get a little bit more of a stretch. And as you get higher and higher and higher, it's stretching more and more and more, almost like tuning a guitar. If you want to tune it higher, you got to get tighter. If you want to tune it lower, you got to loosen it up. That's what's happening when you sing. So when you do screams, there's always an undertone note that you can't even hear sometimes. So if I go, ooh, there's your note. If I go, yeah, there's your note. And if I go, yeah, there's your note. As a rule of thumb, try not to go too far above your vocal break. So for example, my vocal break is at F#4. So we open up this piano app real quick. Before I play an F#4, let's hear where I get. Yeah! There's the note. So I'm at G. I'm a little bit higher than it, but not much. If I went to A or B or C or D, I'm gonna be in serious trouble because now I'm stretching my vocal folds underneath the scream like crazy. That's gonna put a lot of strain on them because you still have all this air pressure that I'm also compressing. Find out where your vocal break is. In case you don't know, your vocal break is your passaggio. It's the place where your voice naturally transitions between your chest voice and your falsetto. I'm just gonna talk about the male voice because the female voice is very similar. It's just a little bit higher. But for the most part, if you're a bass, your vocal break is going to be somewhere between G3 and B3. If you're a baritone, it's going to be somewhere between C4 and E4. And if you're a tenor, it's going to be somewhere between F sharp and A sharp 4. Now, it's very easy to confuse people about where your vocal break is. When I sing this C4, I'm going to sing it quietly. I'm not going to yell, I'm not going to over project it, and I'm not going to let my volume increase very much. I'm just going to go la, then I'm going to go to D, la, then I'm going to go to E, la. I'm still in my chest voice. Now I'm going to get to F, la, still in my chest voice. Now if I try to get to G without getting louder, without pressing, without adding weight, here's the F, la, here's the G, la, now I'm in my falsetto. I can't hit that G in my chest voice without doing something to get there. Now, when I hit this F sharp 4, la, you can hear my voice wavering. That's because that's my natural vocal break. For some people, you might not get that wavering at first, but just listen for that transition. If the F4 is my chest voice, la, and G4 is my falsetto, la, my vocal break has to be F sharp 4. Like that's, unless it's on some quarter tone between F and F sharp 4 or between F sharp 4 and G4, my vocal break has to be there. But if I go into a different register, like if I go into my modal voice, you're not even going to hear the break. I'm going to get la, 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 like I'm all the way at F. Now I'm in more of a mixed voice, but I got all the way to G5. I'm not going to keep going because I have neighbors, and my voice caps out about B5, and it's very loud and it's strained, so I try not to go above this D sharp. After D sharp, it starts to feel like I'm starting to press and add weight to my voice, and that's dangerous because, again, every time you go higher, you're stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching. You don't need to do that. But the point I'm trying to make here is when you find your vocal break, now you know where your high note can sit. If my high scream ends up at that, just a semitone above my vocal break, that is okay. But as long as it's not like a whole tone or multiple tones. Find out where your vocal break is. Preferably have a teacher help you find your vocal break. And then you're going to know like what the maximum potential of your high scream is going to be. So let's get back to business to defeat the Huns.
The only other tip I could really give you is, you know how with the lows, it might have been helpful to pretend you were a dog and, you get the roo, roo, roo. With the highs, it helps to pretend you're like this really angry feral cat. And you're just like,
That's a different technique now. The high you're looking for is, yeah! It's that hybrid technique. Is just giving you, it's giving you that tonal, chesty, false chord again. However, that idea, it is going to help you get up here. If you can already go, yeah, then going, yeah, that is going to help you get up there. It's going to help with the placement. It's not going to help with the actual high scream.
But like I said, if it hurts your throat or it feels itchy or whatever, you're doing it wrong and you're going to fuck up your voice.
But again, stay away from that falsetto thing. We open this up again. We go to here. And I go, ah, and I just do normal false chord, not hybrid. If I go, yeah, and I want to go, ah, yeah, yeah, that's okay. You can't hear the note. But as soon as I go to like A, yeah, the note's coming through now. If I go up to C5, la, yeah, the note's really coming through now. And again, it doesn't hurt. Just don't go above your vocal break. You'll be okay. If you want to go above your vocal break, do it with fry. That's a completely different technique, which is kind of based around falsetto. So if you want to go to B4 and go la, and go into a passaggio there and kind of get a la, and then la, yeah, that's okay. That's totally fine. You can go as high as your heart desires with fry, but don't do it with false chord and don't do it with hybrid. Stay by your vocal break for those two techniques. With fry, go ahead. It's fry. And I just want to make a quick note about fry screaming while we're talking about fry. This, yeah, I just said the weight of my acres. That's not fry. So many people on the internet are teaching that as a fry scream. That is not fry. That's just throat constriction. I'll talk about it in more depth in another tutorial, but the point I'm trying to make is if your scream is based around, yeah, you, yeah, that is not the same as, yeah, you, yeah. That's hybrid. Yeah is me pushing air through constricted vocal folds to create yeah. You're not actually hearing a scream. You're hearing good mouth shapes. You're hearing good tongue manipulation. You're hearing a larynx drop. You're hearing good placement. You're hearing it all in the right resonance chamber. You. So it sounds like a scream, but the actual scream should sound like you or you or you. It shouldn't sound like you. So if that's your scream, you're screaming wrong, you're gonna fuck up your voice, and you should either reassess or take lessons. That is not a fry scream, and if someone tells you that it is, they're a fucking
If you're still struggling with the supersonic high screams, and my advice just isn't helping you at all, don't fret, because there is the alternative, which is the number 6.
The alternative is fry or normal false chord highs. What I'm about to show you in this is not the alternative. This is so dangerous. This is probably the most dangerous thing I do in the entire tutorial.
It's very similar to number 2, where it's more of a yell scream. So for
That is correct.
the explanation, just go back to number 2 and apply it to this. The difference between number 2 and number 6, you have to project a lot.
And that's why it's dangerous. You should not have to project that much. Yes, your screams should be somewhat loud, but they should basically be like as loud as like your singing voice. It shouldn't be quiet. You shouldn't be whispering, but it should not be so loud that you need to back off the mic to make sure it's not clipping.
This scream is really, really loud.
Dangerous. It's really, really dangerous. I'm like forcing the airflow out. This is so bad for your voice. Don't do that. Just don't do that. You're gonna ruin your voice if you do that. If you can't get high screams down, come take lessons. Like, do not resort to that. You will literally destroy your voice doing that, especially in a live setting. Don't do that.
I recommend just turning down the gain a little bit.
I recommend not doing that technique. I can't say it enough. This is literally the most dangerous technique in this tutorial. Don't do it.
Those 6 screams are sort of like the main style of scream that I personally hear in like metalcore or death.
Not really. Most people are doing fry or false chord, whatever.
Some of them are a bit, unconventional. Number 7, metal.
At least I was honest about that part.
I used to hear it a lot in metal music, and then I don't know if people just got sick of it, because it seems like I kind of fell off, and like you kind of really have to look for it now.
Not in 2021. In 2021, everyone's doing pig squeals and tunnel throat. Like, that's all I hear now. Everyone's showing off. I'll be honest, I am curious if it's because I made this video and everyone's like, yo, bring back Breeze, man. This is probably not what happened, though. I just like to pretend, like in my little fantasy world, that the reason everyone's being crazy with their vocals now, it's got 3 million views. Come on. I had to have some impact. Just a little bit.
I'm going to show you 2 different ways that you can do this.
So these are not techniques. I talk about 2 different ways. It's literally just a mid scream. it's a mid. It's just a mid. It's literally the same technique that I showed you for number 1. I mean, I guess you could call it like a pig squeal technique. It's something to spice up what's already there.
The first method is to literally scream the word breathe. When you scream it, you're kind of gonna like turn your mouth to the side like you had a stroke, and then you're gonna
My grandma had a stroke when I was like 10 and I had to take care of her, so I thought I'm actually sitting in her wheelchair right now. Don't worry, she died back in like 2009. But when I moved out of my mom's house and like went off on my own, I was like, I'm taking this. So don't mind me. I just have a dark sense of humor.
kind of do this with your tongue, I guess, you know? What it does is...
So pig squeals are difficult. You're basically just creating this like extra like phonetic. The best way to practice like pig squeals and gutturals and like tunnel throat is to not scream, honestly. It's to just let air come out. So if you just go... and you want to practice a pig squeal, just go, and you can hear the airflow changing. So once you add the scream on top of that, you've got the part that's actually going to make it sound like a pig squeal. And you're not going to like hurt your voice trying to get it because it's just airflow. It's all the airflow. So once you add the actual stream on top of that, it's really not that impressive.
It makes the E and the air come up and like create this wind tunnel that comes out of the side of your mouth. And then
That's one way to put it. It creates a wind tunnel. Sounds like freaking, what's his name? Moroku? Wind tunnel! Every time he wanted to use it, he sucked up the fucking poisonous insects and died.
that's exhale. If exhale style.
Once again, we're going to skip the inhale section. Just don't do it. Don't do inhales. At least it sounds cool, though. This video is going to be so much longer than I wanted it to be.
Number 8, metal screaming technique. This one is personally my favorite scream out of all the...
It's not my favorite scream anymore, but at the time it was.
I am going to say, though, that out of all the screams that I've showed you in the tutorial, this is the one that is going to fuck up your voice.
Completely false. This is the irony of this tutorial. Out of all the screams that I showed you in this entire tutorial, this is the safest one. It's literally just a normal false chord scream. Yeah!
The reason that this one is so dangerous is because it's coming directly from your throat.
All of them are.
Rather than your chest, and so it's coming straight from, you know, the chords. The best...
This just goes to show you that just because somebody's a really good vocalist doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. This is me from 5 years ago saying that a normal false chord scream is dangerous because it comes from your throat instead of from your chest. That makes no sense whatsoever. But after 5 years of research and lessons and teaching, now I have the mental capacity to go back and say, this is wrong. I know what I'm talking about now. So just keep that in mind. Like, your favorite vocalist could literally sound amazing and have no idea what the hell they're doing.
Start with kind of like a low whisper and then just close your throat. So it's like a...
That's almost true. When you're learning to do false chord, you should start with a low whisper. Then add a little bit of aggression to it. Then you can start to close your throat. And what I mean by throat is close your vocal folds. And what I mean by close your vocal folds is just imagine you're going to start talking. And then find that sweet spot where it sounds like a scream. I can see why I thought this was dangerous, because if you do start to constrict your throat, it'll not feel great. Like if you just keep it normal false chord and go, yeah, that's fine. But if you then start constricting your throat and going, yeah, that hurts, that itches, that doesn't feel good at all, but it sounds so cool. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I was trying to talk about, is if you take a normal, healthy, perfectly safe false chord scream, yeah, and then you start to constrict, yeah, don't do that. But that's not what I'm demonstrating.
Trade off to something else and switch back. It just makes it so there's not as much pressure on your voice, and then there's less chance that you're going to damage it.
That's true. Like, if you are going to do the technique I was attempting to show you and do that thing, then yeah, switching to that real quick and then only doing it like once or twice in your set, that will definitely ensure that you're not going to fuck up your voice, because the majority of your set is healthy techniques.
But like I said, this technique is my favorite technique personally, because...
Not anymore, though. Now my favorite technique is like... which I think started as a joke technique at the end of the next Scream tutorial, which I will also do one of these for, because there's some things in that need to be talked about. So here's why I said this is the safest technique. I'm not doing what I just showed you. I'm not going, yeah, survive. I'm going, yeah, survive. That's just false chord. I'm literally just doing a normal false chord scream. It's not dangerous. If you turn it into, yeah, then yes, it's dangerous, but I'm not doing that. You can hear it. So down I climbed. So down I climbed. That's normal false chord.
You don't really see too many bands doing this anymore. Occasionally,
you don't see any bands doing this next technique at all. I was completely incorrect about this.
You'll find it in like grindcore bands like the Berserker.
No, you won't.
Make the sound you would make like if you were clearing phlegm from the back of your throat, like a, and then just apply it to the lyrics.
So this isn't bad for you. I wouldn't recommend doing it. You're gonna like make yourself throw up if you're just like I almost lost it. I'm just like it's not bad for you. I don't know. Someone in the comments called it like Donald Duck core. That's dangerously accurate.
So the final scream that I'm going to teach you for this tutorial, I haven't quite mastered it yet, truth be told. Sometimes
I've mastered it now.
a lot of people actually thought it was a pinch harmonic from the guitar, and other people thought it was an inhale. It's an exhale scream. It's the one that I'm about to show you. It's very.
So here's the thing about this technique. It's actually a variation of fry. So if you're doing a proper fry scream like we talked about earlier, the result is going to give you this like sound. Now when you're doing a proper fry scream, the fry position is basically like in the middle of an open and closed like vocal fold position. So if your chest voice is kind of closed off like this and you've got and then your falsetto is more open like this is kind of like if you put it like in between the two and you kind of get like and then you just push air through that like distortion. Now, if you keep on making that smaller and smaller without letting the true folds like fully connect, the result's going to be I'm literally whistling with my throat. I'm not singing it. This is not the same as like the female whistle register. This is not the same as Mariah Carey. I'm just whistling with my throat. It's very advanced. You have to have really good control over your vocal folds because, again, we're not closed, we're not open, we're like semi-closed. A lot of it has to do with the air. For example, if I keep pumping voice through that, I'm going to get and I'm going to end up with this like very like chesty sounding fry scream. However, if I push more air and less voice, you enter that kind of like whistle tone area. My cat did not like that sound. I'm sorry, did I hurt your ears? Did I hurt your ears? I'm so sorry. I'm almost done, I promise. I know. It's hurting your ears. They're so sensitive. That's my cat, Stella Luna. You want to make sure that if you're doing this whistle technique, it's almost like a reed on like a wind instrument. Like that's what's creating this sound. What's cool about it though is that, like I said, at the time, 2016, I had not mastered it. I'm very good at this now. So for example, you can control the pitch if you get good enough at it. Hopefully my cat doesn't get too upset. So you're going to go to like C7. And then from there, you can go up or down. Say you wanted a G1. I'm just kidding. That's not whistle tones. That's subharmonics. We'll talk about that in a different lesson. Enough fooling around, people. The point I was trying to make is that once you get really, really comfortable with manipulating your vocal folds, you can do some pretty ridiculous things. Obviously, it takes a lot of practice. It's easier said than done because you still have to dictate like where to hold the vocal folds at to create that tone and then get the exact amount of air through the exact amount of closing. It is a very complicated technique, and I probably shouldn't have included it in the tutorial, but I did. And another thing about this technique that I didn't mention in that tutorial is that because it is a form of fry screaming, which I didn't know at the time, it's going to dry out your vocal folds very quickly, just in its nature by going, you can hear the more I do it, the harder it gets to do. So you have to be really careful with these like whistle tones. This is a very, very advanced technique, just like that hybrid scream. Don't start here.
Going up into your whistle register,
You're not. Like I said earlier, you're closing off your vocal folds just enough to create this. It's like on a balloon. But you're doing it with your throat. It's the same thing as that.
It's going to create this little like, you know, vacuum or whatever it's called for the
vacuum, okay.
wind to go through, and it's going to
for the wind to go through because you've got wind in your lungs. But I mean, that is true. You are starting with a whisper and kind of closing it off more and more and more until it's so close that you ever do that thing with the grass? You take the grass and you go, boo, and it makes the same crazy, it's a reed. It's the same concept. That's all it is. Don't start here. You know what it reminds me of? You remember the Suicide Silent You Only Live Once cover. You remember this guy? This is what this sounds like. Take lessons from this guy. This guy's mastered this technique.
One last tip before you go. I'm sure we all know what a falsetto is, but just in case you were curious and wanted to hear what a falsetto scream sounds like.
So this is like a super exaggerated form of it, but people scream in their falsetto all the time, especially in that like 80s hair metal. Like if you want to get that like Judas Priest sound, that's it's false chord distortion. But now you've just added your falsetto on top of it. Totally safe to do that. Again, it's not the same as that's bad because you're going whereas the other one you're just going So keep in mind, there's a big difference between the two. People have been screaming in their falsetto long before my time, and it's perfectly safe. I still use that all the time. That it seems like every time I do like a joke thing, everyone loves it, and then I start doing it in my music, and everyone's like, "Whoa!" Let that be a lesson to you. Have fun.
It's like it just gives you that like little hint of some pressure.
Yeah, a little hint of insanity.
And if you seriously want to learn how to do it, you literally just pick a note in your falsetto and then just like apply some pressure to your throat and project.
No, don't do that. If you want to learn how to do it, learn how to false chord scream and then take that false chord scream and just put your falsetto on top of it. Same, I did that. There you go. That's it. Long story short, if you learned how to scream from this video, double check your vocals, make sure it's safe, because like I said, a lot of the stuff in this tutorial was very like poorly explained or just plain wrong or super dangerous. So just like, I don't know, really pay attention to your voice and make sure you're doing stuff correctly. Once again, if anyone is interested in taking lessons, I put my email in the description. Shoot me an email. I'll get you scheduled when I can, and hopefully we'll learn you something nice and quick. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't already, check out the other stuff on this channel. I got stuff. I have tons of solo projects out. I just put out a new album called Call It Ego, The New Elevator. Really cool sound. It's kind of like new metal, more on the Linkin Park side than like the Korn or Slipknot side. You'll probably like it. It needs some attention. I'm Justin. Signing off.